I remember one of the things that happened when I had been driving truck in Miami was, and this was like in the spring, I think it was '63, but they shot somebody up in a rocket. I think it was Alan Shepard. It wasn't the first time they put a man in space. I think it was the second time. But I think it was when it went around the world the most times at that time for American. And I was driving truck into Miami, and it was right near noon hour, and I was in uptown Miami, and they had all this traffic going every which way. And I was at a stoplight, somewhere in the line of traffic at a stoplight. And when they shot, and it was an overcast day, and everybody was trying to look to see if they could see this rocket, but nobody could see anything because it was overcast. And so everybody had their car radios on, and it was fairly warm, you had the windows open. And so all this big line of traffic going all four different ways at this stoplight just stopped. And you could hear everybody's radio playing the news where they were saying about the rocket launch. And the light kept changing 2 or 3 different times, this and that. And nobody moved, and nobody honked, and nobody made any kind of noise, etc. Everybody just sit there and listen to the radio. And that was really something. That was really a phenomenon. We stopped at Port Everglades, and we had all kind of problems, and they didn't have enough men to run the ship. And so I went and helped another guy carry his stuff down to the gas station, to the bus station, and then I came back, and I had a few drinks, and I went to sleep. I sat in the chief engineer's chair behind his desk, and I sat there and I went to sleep, and he came in and he gave me hell. He said, "What are you doing?" He said, "You're already gone." I said, "No." He said, "Well, we saw you take your bags off." I said, "I didn't. I was just helping somebody else." He said, "Well, the captain's got your money up there." He said, "He thought you quit, so he said we ordered another oiler, so you might as well go." At that time, shipping was just getting hot. Vietnam was just getting started, and shipping was just getting real good. So all these guys were trying to get licenses and try to go to sea. So, and one of the stories I remember about being, I don't know what ship I was on, but I was with this little short third assistant, and I met him somewhere. It was an evening, and we were both on the same ship, but we met each other down in Manhattan, down around the financial district down there. And at night, there's really nothing there except a few bars. And I think I was going down to the church to see if Sandy Colonel's name was written on the board there, to the Church Institute place. And I ran into him, and he said, "Come on with me." He said, "I want you to help me out." So I said, "Where are we going?" He said, "Just up the street here." So I walked in there, and this was a big, long bar, crummy old bar. All these guys sitting around drinking. And he told me, he said, "You just sat in that door," and he said, "When I point at you, you just nod your head like that." And so he walked up to this bartender, and he told this bartender, "Where's my $20 bill?" He said, and he cussed the bartender out. He said, "You took $20 from me." He said, "You didn't think I was going to do it." He said, and he come back, he said, "You see that guy over there?" He said, "Well, me and him are going to rip this damn place apart unless I get the change for my $20 bill." And here I just walked in there, I didn't know nothing. He said, "We're going to tear this place apart." And he said, "This guy can do it. He loves to do this kind of shit." And the bartender gave him the change from his $20 bill and whatever. And we were on our way. Well, another story happened when I was a kid. Stories ended where I was getting on a plane to come out to get my license. I went to Crawford engineering class. It was just a little class. They had a bunch of guys sitting in the back, and we were asking each other questions and looking at a book to get the answers. And so when I went up to the Coast Guard to show them that I had enough time, why, they wouldn't accept that time because some of that time was as an electrician, which wasn't considered a qualified member of the engine department. That was on the Azalea City, or on the Detroit. And so then that was a Coast Guard here in LA. So then I went down to visit my sister. My sister then lived down at the Camp Pendleton. So this was in April, May of '64, because I look on my discharges here, and I got off the Point Vicini, which was the up and down engine that we were on the East Coast. Next job was on the, the next job, as it shows on my discharge, was a third assistant on the Santa Anita, which was my first licensed job. So anyhow, I went down to San Diego, and I thought, well, I'll take my papers down to San Diego and see if I can get see what they have to say down there. That was kind of a smaller Coast Guard station and everything. So I took my papers down there, and the guy looked at him. He said, well, what we can do, he said, we can give you a limited license with this time. And I said, well, what's that going to cover? He said, well, that's going to cover like 7,500 horsepower. So there was, most ships had more horsepower than that. There was two different Victories that had 6,000 and 9,000 or 8,000, and there was other smaller ships that had 6,000, 7,000 horsepower. I said, okay, let's do that. And so I could still sail as an oiler if I wanted to. I could go back sailing as an oiler if I wanted to. So I said, well, let's do that. So I got on this Santa Anita, which was 4,000 horsepower. It was called a C1. It was kind of a little smaller ship. And I got down that in June of, matter of fact, I think it was in July. Yeah, I got on it in July of '64. And we went to South America. We went all down the coast to, I think we went to Callao, Peru. And about the only, this guy was an oiler, and that ship had a small engine room, and the throttles and everything was right on almost on top of the boiler, a little in front of the boiler, and it was hotter than hell. And of course, this was in August, and we were going south to Callao, Peru, which is right near Lima, Peru, and man, it was hot. And this guy used to go behind the boiler. I don't know how much the temperature was behind the boiler, 120, 130 degrees. He'd go behind that boiler and peek out at me and look at me, And so I was scared as hell. The first couple of weeks I was with him, I carried a pipe wrench around in my back pocket because I didn't know what this guy was going to do. But after I got to get to know him, everybody else was scared of him, but I wasn't scared of him. I was kind of friendly with him. I remember his name.
A little goofy, whatever he was.
So then we made our trip down to Callao, Peru, and Lima, Peru, and I remember one time down there, that's kind of a waterfront town. Callao is a waterfront town. There's nothing there but a bunch of bars. And I remember I was coming back from one of these bars about 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Because over there, things stay open all night. And the bartender told me, he said, you go back to the ship? He said, you watch out for these guys that are jumping people. We already had a couple seamen that were jumped right where you had to go through the gate. There was a small gate there, was a cement wall on both sides. You had to go through this gate, about a 6-foot gate hole in the fence, where you had to go to get to the dock. And these guys were waiting around there, and then these two guys would jump out and pull a knife on somebody and take their money, see. So he said, you watch out. If you see these guys, he said, don't go around. If you see them guys hanging around that gate, don't go there. Wait. And he said, watch out for somebody walking down the street. He said, if you see guys walking up the street towards you, he said, one guy will be in the front, one guy will be in the back. He said, you watch out. They're going to try and get you between them. So I'm going down the street, walking in the middle of the street. Of course, there ain't no cars in that town. It's a little bitty town, and that street had cement on it. I see this guy coming up, walking towards me. So I'm walking in the middle of the street, and this guy's walking on the sidewalk, and as he passes me, and I see another guy walking down there about 50 feet away, walking behind him, And as this guy passes me, I look at him and I start running like hell. Well, I just got by the other guy, and I was so scared that I ran all the way past it, and there's no way they could have caught me. I was flying, but that's what they was trying to do. They was trying to get me right between them, and then they'd pull a knife out and get what money I had or slit my throat or whatever. That's one of the few stories I can remember from that ship. Oh yeah, one of the stories I remember from the Azalea City. When I was on the Azalea City, it ran from New York to Puerto Rico, and about 3/4 of the crew on there was all Puerto Ricans, and they had families both places. I think some of them had wives both places. So anyhow, when I was first on there, I would see this oiler or somebody, I can't remember who it was. I'd walk all around and you'd see them looking up. They're always looking up, and they'd look up there, and then they'd walk around somewhere else, and they'd look up there and keep looking up there. And then all of a sudden, they'd find one place. They'd just stand in one spot. So I asked the engineer, I said, well, how come that guy just stands in that one spot? Every time I come down here, he's standing in one spot. He said, yeah. He said he looked up there, he saw something he thought was loose. So he's standing there hoping it's going to fall and hit him, and he's going to sue the company.